Welcome everyone to the Roundtable on Food Scrap Composting Options for Municipalities in Prince George's County. I'm Martha Ainsworth, Chair of the Prince George's County Sierra Club Zero Waste Team.
And I'm Mike Hunninghake, Program Manager for the Sustainable Maryland Program.
The food scrap composting is a critical strategy for reducing landfill methane emissions that contribute to climate change and for conserving landfill space. It can also save taxpayers money. About a quarter of the county's population lives in a municipality, but according to an inventory conducted by the Sierra Club, fewer than half of the county's municipalities have any sort of municipal program involving collection and diversion of food scraps. That would be by backyard composting programs, drop-off points for food scraps, or curbside collection of food scraps. And some of those activities that are already underway are pilots.
At today's roundtable, organized by our two organizations, you'll learn more about the environmental and financial benefits of food scrap composting. You'll also hear about service providers about different options for municipal food scrap composting programs. And you'll learn about and discuss the experience to date in municipalities in the county that have adopted one or more of these measures, the costs and benefits, participation rates, lessons learned from the experience, and more.
Here's how the roundtable will unfold. Mike and I will briefly review the environmental and financial benefits of food scrap composting, including recently introduced food scrap composting criteria in a Sustainable Maryland certification program. This will be followed by two panels of speakers. The first panel will be speakers representing providers of food scrap composting services, from backyard composting to drop-off and curbside collection of food scraps. The second panel will feature speakers from three municipalities, Hyattsville, College Park, and Greenbelt, on their experience with these programs. There'll be an opportunity for a few quick questions to service providers after the first panel, and we thank you for those who sent some questions in advance. We're going to use those as well. And then following the second panel, we'll open the floor to questions and comments.
This roundtable is being recorded. If you have any questions for the panelists, put your name and the question in the Q&A field, not the chat, the Q&A field, and to whom the question is addressed. Please put your questions in the Q&A field so that we can access them quickly. The chat can be used to contact the technician, Gary Young, share information, or to comment. As there are quite a few people who may want to comment, please be as concise as possible so that we can accommodate everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Before we hear from the panelists, I want to underscore why we care about composting food scraps, why we're here. And I'd like to talk about three reasons. Gary, if you could put up that pie chart for me. The first reason is that it reduces waste and conserves landfill space. Now, as you can see on the pie chart, according to the 2014 to 15 waste characterization study of the Brown Station Road sanitary landfill, 31% of residential waste was compostable. So in that year, 63,800 tons of compostable waste was deposited in the landfill. Now, compostable waste includes vegetative food, non-vegetative food, compostable paper, and leaves, grass, and brush. There are other ways of diverting food scraps, wasting less food, donating it, using it as animal feed. But composting conserves resources and creates a valuable soil amendment, compost, and that nurtures the soil. Okay, the second reason you may be interested is that it saves money. Now, you may remember that back in October, the landfill tipping fee increased from $59 a ton to $70 a ton. So that means every ton of food waste that you divert from the landfill to backyard composting or any other way you divert it saves the municipality a full $70 in tipping fees per ton. The organics composting facility in Upper Marlboro, their tipping fee is only $45 a ton, 36% less than the landfill. So every ton diverted from the landfill to the organics facility saves the municipality $25 a ton in tipping fees. Now, if food scraps can be collected at the same time as yard waste, there'll be less residual trash, and there could be savings in terms of collection and transport of all waste. So now we get to the third and really the most important reason why we want to talk about food scrap composting, and that's because it fights climate change. Diversion of food scraps and other compostable materials from the landfill reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and particularly landfill methane emissions. The anaerobic decomposition of organic material, meaning without oxygen, in the landfill produces methane, some of which, but not all of it, captured by an on-site methane collection system. Methane accounts for about half of all landfill gas, and another 42% is carbon dioxide. So why do we care about methane? It's an extremely potent greenhouse gas. Over a 20-year time frame, methane has a global warming potential 84 to 86 times greater than carbon dioxide. 84 to 86 times greater than carbon dioxide. So according to research by the Environmental Integrity Project, 9 out of the top 10 methane emitting facilities in the state are municipal solid waste landfills, and the Brown Station Road landfill is near the top of the list. So one of the major of the reasons for expanding food scrap composting, landfill space savings, and climate is by far the most compelling. One of the major recommendations of the Prince George's Climate Action Plan is to expand food scrap composting countywide. But that objective can't be achieved without the participation of municipalities, home to about a quarter of the county's population. That's why we've invited you here. We hope that this roundtable discussion will inspire you to take action in every municipality to realize the benefits of food scrap composting. Now, Mike will speak to Sustainable Maryland's new certification criteria. Mike?
Thanks very much, Martha. So I think all of the communities represented here today are familiar with the Sustainable Maryland program. The program has been around for 10 years, and it's located at the Environmental Finance Center at UMD in College Park. And for the first time in those 10 years, we are adding a new slate of actions to the action menu that communities can take to score points towards certification in our program. We also provide guidance documents for all of these actions on our website. So we expect to have 20 plus new actions on the website in January. And those will include some new categories like historic preservation and transportation. But the one action that has definitely come through in applications in the last several years under innovative demonstration projects has been the various composting and food scrap collection programs that you all have been doing. So we've taken a lot of what you folks, some of your communities have already been doing, and put that into the new action. The organics composting action will cover backyard composting. It will cover third-party curbside collection, municipal curbside collection and drop-off, and any combination of these together. So you'll find on the website in January the guidance document that will outline those different types of programs that you can submit documentation for. It will also go into things like how to conduct outreach and education efforts to residents, putting together a marketing plan, tracking and monitoring your progress. It'll also talk about who should be involved in putting this together if you're starting one from scratch. Talking about elected officials and procurement folks and food scrap collection contractors, and of course, departments of public works. It'll also give some guidance on some of the logistics and resources involved in terms of backyard compost bins and curbside bins and staff time and that sort of thing. And it'll also, for the first time in our actions, talk about metric reporting. So what we want to try and do is capture some of the metrics for what is going on in your communities with these different programs. And then finally, we will have the submission requirements, which we'll talk about how you can describe what the program is about, demonstrate how you're accomplishing one or more of these types of actions, whether it's backyard composting bins to residents or third-party collection or curbside collection by the Department of Public Works. You'll describe those actions in the text box. You'll upload documents like invoices for compost bins, copies of the waste collection schedule, pickup dates, and where the composting occurs, public notice documents of the drop-off day, the week and times of day, and then any sorts of newspaper articles or municipal newsletters that highlight the program, website or social media screenshots, and other outreach materials. So, and finally, we'll also be spotlighting the different programs that are going on all across Maryland, actually, including the ones that are happening right now in Prince George's County. So we look forward to sharing that with you in the new year, and you'll all be getting emails about this whole slate of new actions very soon. So at this point, we would like to introduce the members of our first panel. And they would be Doug Alexander, founder of backyardcomposting.org, Ben Parry, CEO of Compost Crew, and Denise Curry, the manager of the recycling section in the Prince George's County Department of the Environment. Each panelist will speak for about 5 minutes, after which we'll open the floor to questions. Please put your questions for service providers in the Q&A function, not the chat. And we'll begin with Doug Alexander on backyard composting. Welcome, Doug. Good to see you.
Thanks. Well, yes, backyardcomposting.org is my nonprofit project to reduce food waste going into the landfills. And I'm a pretty pragmatic, straightforward person. And I always look for how to do something most cost effectively and in the easiest way possible. And that's what I think backyard composting is. The program started in Cheverly, Maryland, where I live, about 5 years ago. And the process was our green team started meeting with elected officials, with Public Works, and discussing how we could go about doing the program. And as Martha mentioned, one of the first questions is, why should we do this? And the compelling reason is that it saves money. And in Cheverly, we have currently have about 400 of our 1,600 households composting. And that's saving us, we're estimating about 500 pounds, a quarter ton is composted at each household. And that's saving the town about $17 per household a year and $170 over the life of the bin, which we estimate at 10 years, which is the warranty period. So that was compelling to the elected officials that we can save money, we can do something good environmentally. And then the second thing was, how do we go about persuading residents to compost? And I think the most important thing there is that households are wasting a lot of food. And according to American Wasteland, up to $2,300 in food waste is put in the trash every year by a family of 4. So there's a huge amount of food being wasted. And if families can, through composting, look at how they're wasting food, then they can change their behavior and they can have greater savings that they can invest in other things. It also is one of the ways of reducing the food waste problem, at least on the residential level. And so I think that's compelling. When I started the program, we also had to figure out where we were going to get compost bins. And I did a worldwide search on compost bins, Germany, China, Canada, US, and elsewhere. And I think that's the biggest thing that we offer is that we found a vendor in Canada that has kept a consistently low price for compost bins. They recently went up with inflation, but there's $37.50 per compost bin. And that's much more cost effective than buying them at Amazon or Home Depot or wherever. And we also had to come up with how we would do cost sharing. The town didn't want to give compost bins away free, and we wanted to have residents invest in the composting program. So we came up with, since the cost was about $40 per bin, we decided that residents should pay $20 per bin, and that way they would have a vested interest in the program, and that would make them more likely to compost since they had a buy-in. And then the town was investing at that time about $10 per bin, and we were able to get grants from multiple sources that helped pay the other $10 per bin. So everyone had a vested interest: the community, granting organizations, the town, the residents, and that made it more cost-effective for everyone. So and when we do the backyard composting program, we now work with 12 municipalities in Maryland, several in other states. And that's what we ask them to do, is that when they're purchasing the bin through the program at that reduced price, that they require residents to purchase. Is it 5 minutes already? I see someone popping up. Okay.
Yes.
Wow, that was fast. Anyway, we require the municipalities have residents pay at least $20 a bin, up to $30 per bin, and that they have an investment in it as well. Never
Excellent.
talked so short in my life.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. Our next panelist is Ben Parry of Compost Crew. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you so much. Just let me get this up on the screen. So, thank you very much for the invitation. You've already done a great job of going over the high level of food waste collection and benefits of composting. So I'll get right to the nuts and bolts. I'm glad Doug went first, because backyard composting is extremely important. I'm a backyard composter myself. Unfortunately, not everybody has yards. Not everybody knows how to do it or is willing to do it. And also, you can't compost everything in your backyard, including meats and bones. So drop-off programs, curbside collection programs are important complement to backyard composting. So we're a business. Compost Crew is a business that's dedicated to food waste collection and composting. We're based in Rockville, Maryland. And we're focused on trying to figure out ways to do this as affordable as possible, as convenient, as clean, so that we can build programs that can scale. The smaller scale programs are all really important, but we also need to make this a mainstream service, and that's what we're working on doing in partnership with you. We do partner with a number of municipalities within Prince George's already, and you'll hear from some coming up, I believe. And we also have a number of customers throughout the Washington, D.C. region. So I'll get right to the nuts and bolts. Like I said, we just a little bit about us. We've been around for 10 years. We started with recycling residential food scraps in Montgomery County. Then we acquired a commercial food scrap hauler a few years ago. Now we're up to 14, almost 15 trucks dedicated to food scrap collection. And we have over 6,000 customers, commercial, residential, municipal, throughout the region. We go up to Baltimore and down south to Woodbridge, Virginia, and throughout Prince George's County and west into Loudoun County, Virginia. And in addition to collections, we've also been building out a network of distributed on-farm composting facilities that we could integrate with our route networks and complement the large facilities like the one you have at Western Branch. We do have a white paper that we published last year that, if you haven't already seen it, you can access it at compostcrew.com/localgov. I can provide that link again, but it goes through some of our lessons learned. One of the lessons learned that you'll see is just, as you're designing your programs, do you want to maximize participation or minimize the hit to the budget, or some type of combination of that? Because there's different types of programs that you can consider. You can either do a full subsidy curbside collection program where the resident pays nothing, and that's where you'll get the most participation. A partial subsidy curbside collection program, which will drop participation a bit because the resident has to pay some money, or just a drop-off program That's the most convenient, the least convenient, but it's the most affordable per resident. And then also we've been doing a lot of community programs for HOAs and neighborhoods where the municipality has not been involved at all. A few case studies for you. So town of Chevy Chase. So outside of Prince George's County, because I figured that you'd be hearing from municipalities within the county on this call, but town of Chevy Chase started back in 2013 with a fully subsidized curbside collection program. And they started out around 10-15% participation, but now they're closer to 50% now. And that's been going really well. And they've renewed that 5-year contract for another 5 years. City of Baltimore just started a drop-off program in the summer of 2021. They started with a pilot for 3 months, and they just extended it for, I believe, another year. And they're doing 5 drop-off sites with us. And we've seen a lot of positive feedback already. And in general, whether it's a drop-off program or curbside collection program, whenever we run into somebody on a street, I can't believe, I love this program. Can't believe I've cut my trash down by 1/3 to 1/2. I mean, that we hear that all the time. Another successful program was Fairfax County. They launched a drop-off program at 2 locations at their landfills and transfer stations, and they plan to continue to expand to hit their zero waste 2030 targets. And just one last point that I'll make after going through those case studies quickly is, in addition to just rolling out the drop-off programs and the curbside collection programs, this is a very large challenge, and one challenge is the infrastructure. So most municipalities do lack the compost processing capacity. We're very lucky to have Western Branch, but it doesn't always make there will be limited capacity with most infrastructure. And also, we want to try to keep the food waste as close to possible as a source of generation when we're composting it. So what we've been building is these turnkey distributed composting systems where we can partner with the community, partner with a local farm, and keep the food waste and the resulting compost all within the same municipality. And that's what we're building. So we actually have 2 in Montgomery County already, and a 3rd is coming up in Prince George's County. So we're building our first compost outpost in Prince George's County. And I'm over my 5 minutes, I believe, but I'd be happy to talk more about that in the Q&A section. And here's
excellent.
Thank
you, Ben.
Yep.
Our final speaker for this panel is Denise Curry, who is the recycling manager at the county's Department of the Environment. Welcome, Denise.
Hello, everyone. Prince George's County has been operating a composting facility for 29 years. It's operated through intergovernmental agreement with Maryland Environmental Service, and we accept yard trim, grass clippings, leaves, brush, Christmas trees, and we compost those and turn the Christmas trees into mulch for an annual giveaway event, which, of course, due to COVID, did not occur last year. We also make and sell Leaf Grow and Leaf Grow Gold. We service roughly 172,000 households countywide. Well, actually, we're moving in that direction. We have 172,000 households in our curbside collection programs. We are processing yard trim 60,000 tons annually. Last fiscal year, we processed just over 18,000 tons of food scraps. Our materials are collected by county contracted haulers. We do not collect, the county doesn't collect on its own. We contract those services out. So we've been composting food scraps at the facility since 2013. And we started with a gore system, which is undercover. You can see in this picture, I guess, where the 3 heaps are covered on the ground. We started composting in 2013 food scraps. And this picture with the 3 covered heaps, the 3 green covers, was how we started. We've expanded twice since then, and we are now, if you see the picture in the lower right-hand corner, you can see our facility. There's a huge set of bunkers down here and 8 heaps in the middle. That in expansion to the 12 bunker wall system, or 12 heaps, allows us to compost an additional 32,000 tons of material, including food scraps. Some of the customers that we currently have is our own Department of the Environment, University of Maryland, which is an example of closed loop composting. We have a number of private contractors, a couple of municipalities, including University Park, nationals, some out-of-county entities as well, including the Smithsonian. Are you all able to see where I am now?
You're on the pie chart.
Yes, okay. Martha discussed briefly the waste characterization study. When we initiated our pilot in 2017, EPA grant-funded pilot, we targeted households in the central area of the county and Fort Washington area, a little bit in West Laurel, just so that we could get an idea of how this was going to go for us. With the proven success, we're expanding. We expanded in FY21, well, actually, yeah, last year, we reached out to 10,000 households. We garnered a little over 1,200, I'll say, but some of the materials and a better picture of our facility are presented here. So we've been testing since 2013. We've grown. We implemented our own program to expand to 200 households. And then last fiscal year, we expanded to another 1,200. The materials you see are engagement materials, things that we provided to the residents. We provided a 32-gallon wheeled cart. We also provided a 1.5-gallon mini bin, the FAQs, how-tos, a welcome letter. We mailed a postcard to residents for them to opt in. And you can see that the cards are labeled with acceptable materials in bilingual messaging. And in the center, you see a rendering, another picture of our compost site. The magnet was also included as part of our engagement materials, and it's a refrigerator magnet, so residents have a quick visual as to what can go in this mini bin and organics cart. Now, we're moving forward yet again. This recaps what I just said in reference to last year's expansion. We have the additional 1,200 households. Our materials have changed a bit. They've, I'll say, grown. We have the new organics cart, a bright lime green, the kitchen mini bin, and the same engagement materials just modified to transition from pilot to program. And our next steps, which we'll take the opportunity to announce right here, is countywide expansion in this current fiscal year. We're reaching out to every one of the 172,000 households in our curbside program with a target of, we're hopeful to get 20,000 opt-ins. Carts for all of those who do opt in will be delivered in April of 22 in recognition of Earth Day. The same materials will be provided, a 2-gallon kitchen bin, a 35-gallon wheeled cart, various engagement materials. The director's letter to each household should go out within the next week. And following it very closely within a week to 10 days should be the opt-in postcard. So stay tuned, watch your mail if you're a county resident. We're looking forward to hearing from you right away. Great way to celebrate the holidays. We're giving you the opportunity to compost your food scraps. And of course, all of the materials that we collect can be combined with yard trim. They're picked up curbside on Monday mornings. I do want to add that all of the materials that we do collect must be placed inside the compost bin. If you have food scraps, you can use compostable liners, but the liner has to be in the 32-gallon wheeled cart. You can use a paper bag, but it has to be placed in the cart. So additional plans include expanding composting to other county agencies. For me, it would be, I'd like to target corrections next. We're going to promote and of course implement some pilots, hope to pilot with some elementary schools or middle and high schools, those that are interested, multifamily properties, commercial entities, and of course, we're excited to provide technical support to any municipality. In addition to technical support, we also offer tours of our composting facility. So if you would like to visit us and get some technical support and information, feel free to reach out to me. So I can close out of that and stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Denise. We now have time for a few quick questions before launching the next panel of municipalities. Martha, what questions do we have?
Okay, let me start with one just to follow up on Denise. Have there ever been any demand issues for the compost generated at the county compost facility? What's the capacity there to process additional compost?
We have capacity. We have substantial capacity with the 12 bunker walled system. We're able to accept significant tonnage at this point.
Okay, great. We had two people asking, Ben, where's the new location of this first compost outpost in Prince George's County, Ben?
Yeah, so you're lucky enough, for those of you who aren't aware, to have a composting legend in Prince George's County, a guy named Benny Erez, who works with Eco City Farms. And he actually helped us design the compost outpost. And Eco City Farm, so we're installing our first one in Prince George's County with Benny at Eco City Farms in Bladensburg.
That's terrific.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Actually, the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, visited Eco City Farms not too long ago, not just to see the composting site, but just as a model of urban agriculture. So that's exciting. They've got a lot of attention.
That's really terrific. I think here's the question for all three of you, and it's a perennial question. What are the ways to deal with the smell, wild animals, and bugs that the food scraps seem to attract? Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go on that one. The main reason there's odor is when the compost gets too wet. And the simple solution to that is I usually just pull off the bin, move it to the side, and then shovel it back into the bin, which aerates it. But almost all odor problems come from too much water. And you can add leaves in, that will also soak up the water. But anything that soaks up the water will stop the odor. Also, don't put in meat, dairy, oils, things like that, which cause odor.
And that's for the backyard composting. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I guess there's a difference between the composting process and then the actual collections and source separation. So with the source separation and collection, I think we get this objection all the time when we're talking to property managers, multi-unit apartment buildings or office buildings, et cetera. And we have to remind them, we're not bringing you food waste. You're already generating the food waste. It's already going into a trash can somewhere. So the rodents and the stink are already there. So what we're doing is we're putting it into actually a bin that's designed for food waste, and we're putting you on a schedule to collect that food waste regularly and get it out of there. So we're not generating any new waste when we're recycling food waste, when we're collecting food waste. And like Doug said, I mean, there's a lot of different ways on backyard composting, but when you have a place like Western Branch, or you have we have our facilities run by certified compost operators, you're running this professionally. It's a professionally managed compost pile. And so you're mitigating all of those things, all of those concerns.
If I could chime in and add, we try to encourage residents not to place their materials, those that are participating in our program thus far, don't place your materials out before collection day. You can contain them in the kitchen mini bin or freeze them, because that helps to reduce and eliminate odors. Place it out the morning of, and typically by the end of the day, the materials are gone. And when they're distributed or disposed of at Western Branch, once the truck that collects them is tipped, the materials are covered immediately with a layer of brown material to help absorb the moisture and cut down on odors.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on Maureen's kind of question and comment? Backyard composting is not for everyone, nor can it reach huge percentages. In Cheverly, we reached 25%. I read a story about some Canadian communities that have gotten up to 60%, but we need every option available. And I'm really excited about what the county is doing. That's going to bring in a huge number of new households. I like what Ben is doing. I hadn't heard about his drop-off program, which makes his program even more cost effective. So I think we have to do everything that can be done in order to reach goals where maybe we're reaching 60 or more % of households in the county.
Oh, thanks for answering that question. So why don't we pause the questions here for and to hear from the next panel, and we'll have more questions after the next panel. So we have in our next panel, now fortunately Leslie Riddle from Hydesville has not been able to make it today, so we have two panelists, Janet McCaslin, the Sustainability Coordinator of College Park, and Kristin Weaver of the Greenbelt Neighborhood Compost Project. Each panelist will speak for 5 minutes, after which we'll open the floor to questions. And I know that there are a few more participants here from municipalities that are composting now. And we may be able to divide up Leslie's time between a couple of you to also tell us what you're doing. So let's go ahead and begin with Janet. Welcome, Janet.
So my name is Janet McCaslin from the City of College Park. I am the Sustainability Coordinator. All right, so what you're looking at right now in the top left is our compound at Public Works. This is an old picture, but basically we have about 35-gallon food scrap buckets and signage and a compost container for our bio bags, our bags. And the bottom picture is of the newest location that was opened in 2020. So our budget is about 12 grand a year. It is strictly drop off at this time. Like I said, we did expand to a second location in February of 20. We are planning to increase the number of drop-off sites. There's a lot of community interest to add more locations. And if you could move to the next slide. So you had asked about participation rate. Well, we really have no great way to be able to quantify participation rate, but we have handed out about 195-gallon food scrap buckets, and the tonnages per week, they just continue to increase, which is a great indicator of how many people are participating. And for the educational component, when we rolled the program out, we knew that we really had to get the word out and to educate our residents. So this postcard here, so front and back, was mailed to every single family household in the city. And it also had a great incentive of be the first 50 people and, get this 5-gallon food scrap bucket. So it really got people to come in and get their bucket. And it gave me an opportunity to be able to do outreach right then and there. Within a day, we had went through all of our 5-gallon buckets. We did end up ordering more, which was great. So the educational component, you can go to the next slide. The educational component. So we designed some labels for the carts to show people what is and is not accepted. It's pretty cut and dry. The county basically accepts almost everything. And we did a user guide. Very easy, 1, 2, 3. This is what you do. The in list, the out list, just so it could be very easy. We also have this in Spanish if people need it. But that just shows some of the ways that we try to get the information out. We also advertise in our municipal scene, which is our monthly newsletter that the city puts out. And we not advertise, but we also get the word out on our city manager's weekly bulletin. We did some outreach at farmers markets. In fact, we hired Compost Crew, their representatives, to provide a weekend worth of outreach at 2 of our farmers markets. And it really went over well and got that program at the farmers markets up and running. Okay, so if you go to the next slide. So we also create some social media campaigns. These are just a few, and yes, you can compost that, because a lot of people are, really confused at times about what can and can't be composted. I hear it a lot. Can I compost pumpkins? Well, of course you can compost pumpkins. Rotten apples. What about pizza boxes? I know when they get greasy, I can't really put them in the recycling. Well, I'm here to say you can put them in your compost. So this really just helps hit another section of people that don't normally read the municipal scene or any of the other things. So as many of you have said before, education, outreach is, the way to get to the public and to be able to let them know what we offer. Basically, to give a recap of our whole program, in 2017, we actually started with a backyard composting program where we'd got the bins from Doug Alexander, who we heard from earlier. And to date, since 2017, we've sold almost 300 of them. We do sell them for $20, and the city does pay the difference. We did open that up so that non-residents could purchase them for $40 because there were many people from other areas that wanted to buy them. Our initial plan was for our drop-off location to be at farmers markets. But after thinking about that for a little while, we realized that we weren't hitting enough of a market. It would only be on weekends. So we opened it up at Public Works, so it'd be available 24/7. That's basically about it that I was going to cover. I will say that each year we have increased by a huge amount. This past between 20 and 21, we increased by 26% in tonnage volume wise, and we continue to get the word out, and we hope to open new locations in the near future. So that shows you in 2021 how much we did divert, but again, since 2019, when we initiated the program, a whole whopping 56 tons of food scrap have been diverted from the landfill. And I've got to applaud every resident of College Park because they're dedicated. They bring it here at DPW or at the Old Town location of the farmers market. And you can go to the last slide just to get a preview of what our food scrap bucket looks like. And thank you.
Thanks very much, Janet. That's great news. And I love that bar chart.
You're welcome.
Success you've had. So thank you. Our final speaker for the second panel is Kristin Weaver of Greenbelt. Welcome, Kristin.
So let me get my slides up here. And I should say that I am speaking here as a representative of the Greenbelt Neighborhood Composting Group. And I know that I saw that Laura Rosenthal and Hallie Ahern were on and some other members of our group. So I did not start out at the very beginning of the project. So a lot of the information I have about the origins of the project come from information from then. And I should also say that a month ago today, I was also elected to Greenbelt City Council. So although I am speaking as you know, all of this work was done as just a regular resident, but now I have a different role as well. And I think I saw Mayor Jordan and Councilmember Jay Davis on as well from Greenbelt. So the Greenbelt Neighborhood Composting, it's actually part of it was part of a grant that had several different projects involved. I'm going to talk about the 3-bin system at Spring Hill Lake, which is what I've mostly been part of. but it was a grant in 2017. This was again before I got started, about $11,000 for 3 different projects, plus another 10,000 in kind from Greenbelt Public Works. And it was this 3-bin system, plus some commercial worm wigwams on the back deck of the New Deal Cafe, as well as some homemade kits and lessons for home vermicomposting. So that was all part of the initial grant. And then some other things. Laura reminded me that there's, we also, the city also does other things. And I think I saw Luisa Robles, the sustainability coordinator for Greenbelt, is on. There's also backyard compost education, distribution of some of Doug Alexander's bins, and we have a drop off from Compost Crew. So there's actually a lot of different things happening in Greenbelt, but this is what I'm going to talk about, these 3 bins. And the grant provided the supplies, the lumber and stuff to buy, and to buy the bins and the tools, and then Public Works built the bins. And that there is some funding. A second bin system has been built since, and there's actually, I believe, supplies for a 3rd bin as well available. So, originally it was the Greenbelt Zero Waste Circle. They were the ones who got the grant, and they started out with a roster of 25 families. So that upper left is the notice in the news review that I first saw. That's how I got involved. I was just interested in that. And they set up the original trainings to recruit the original families. And then originally it was all in-person training. We have done now virtual trainings as well, and have done some recruitment. We've trying to get people. We have a space on the city website, as you can see there on the right. We do have some social media presence and some other things. Although I think that in terms of recruiting, I think some of the most successful recruiting has been just word of mouth, people hearing about it and being interested in it. So we do, about an hour-and-a-half training to let people know what composting is, how it works, what they can include in the bins, because we can't take as many things as some of the commercial systems. We don't want, we're not doing the meat, we're just doing the vegetable food scraps and things like that. And then we train people to combine that with the wood chips and leaves at the right time of year, which the wood chips are dropped off. That's another in-kind assistance from Public Works. They drop off the leaves and wood chips for us. So people have to go through training and get information about how to, what the process is and what they're supposed to do. We do require people to weigh and log their scraps. So we do actually have a record of that. And so they have to go through the training and then go through the walkthrough. And then we have people who participate in work days. We don't require that necessarily, but it is, a neighborhood volunteer group. So we haven't had too much of a problem of getting people to volunteer, but we certainly don't want to limit it to people who might not physically be able to participate in those work days. That you can see there shoveling and some sifting with that trommel sifter. I think an advantage of this system is people do get compost back if they want it. So participants, volunteers in the work days can take the compost home with them. And then the extra, there's a community garden at the Spring Hill Lake Recreation Center that we give extra compost to. Some of the other community gardens in Greenbelt if we have extra. We have trained 72 total households thus far, 58 of which have actually dropped off food scraps at some point. We have dropped off a bit, I have to say. We only about 23 of those households have dropped off and since the beginning of 2021, about 18 in the last 6 months. And I think part of that may be the pandemic. Part of it is there's now a Compost Crew drop off in Greenbelt. And I think that's more convenient for some people. And they can accept some things different than we can, some of the meat scraps and other things. And then I think my last slide here is just a few more stats. So the number of households. We are on our 21st batch of compost since March of 2018. And that's the total of 8,500 kilograms of food scraps. So I think I calculated that in pounds. It was about 18,000 pounds or 9 tons. So not as impressive as some of the other projects, but it is, much more of a neighborhood compost group. And that's produced at least 130 bags of compost. And I think I had some other stuff about lessons learned and issues and things like that. I think the biggest thing is, I think we need to be more active with the recruiting because we are having this drop off. We need to build back up our numbers and get some new households involved. So.
Thanks a lot, Kristin, and also Janet. Thank you very much. Let's open the floor for some questions of these panelists and for a comment. And you could put your questions in the Q&A again. Mike, what questions do we have?
Well, we've got a few here already. So first of all, what are the practical steps and funding sources that municipalities can tap into to implement a composting program?
Well, for the city of College Park, we actually self-funded. We did, like I said, budgeted $12,000 the first year and have continued that amount. Going forward, if we open up some more locations, we will be looking for other sources. What was the second part of that question?
Well, what are the sort of practical steps that municipalities can take?
So you really do need to think about how you want to grow your program, whether you want it to be continuously as a drop-off program or eventually a curbside program. It's always our wish to make it curbside eventually. So.
I'll chime in also and add that for our 2017 pilot, we received an EPA grant, applied for and received an EPA grant. So there are probably coming down the pike this year, significant funding opportunities through the EPA for other programs.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Anyone else?
Yep.
In Chevrolet, we had a number of businesses that made donations. And we also had both some local and not local nonprofits. Again, they were modest sums, 500. I think the largest was probably $1,000, but it did end up funding 25% of the cost of the bins. And then the town invested 25% and residents paid in the rest.
And I think in the case of the Greenbelt system, it was a community impact grant that provided the initial funding. And I think at the time, the supplies for one of those 3-bin systems was about $1,000 plus a bit more for maybe some shovels and pitchforks and things like that. I mean, lumber prices have gone up, so that might be higher now than it was 4 years ago. But not a huge amount of money, but it's also, as I said, we're not actually composting as much as some of the other systems.
Okay, thanks, Kristin. Another question that we've got is, would it be more efficient and cost effective for municipalities to support a county-wide program that is administered by the county? And is that possible? Denise, that one's for you, and you need to unmute.
Right, there we are. If the municipality is not currently a part of the county's programs, there'll be some changes that need to be made, or at least we'll have to explore that. If you're receiving county services, then there's no problem because the opportunity is coming down the pike within the next week or two. But if the municipality is not a part of the county's programs, then we will be able to work with you to help you. We'll coach you through the process, and we'll have to look at an intergovernmental agreement for estimated tonnage and things along those lines for acceptance of materials at the site. But we'll absolutely work with anyone who's interested to try to make it happen.
Great, thank you. Martha, do we have some other questions?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here from the Q&A. If I transcribe them properly. Will the county require all municipalities to comply with curbside composting collection? And another person related to that said that they use a private trash contractor, Bates actually. Can we opt into the new countywide compost program?
I can't speak to whether or not they can opt in simply because they have a contractor who also services the county. That I don't know. But there was another portion of that. I don't know that the county can require municipalities to implement organics collection either. I have no information on that, But I did want to address the previous question. The second part of it was whether it would be cost effective. If whether they were able to join our program or they implemented one of their own, it would be cost effective because tip fees at the differing facilities at the landfill versus the compost site, tip fees at the compost site are substantially lower than the landfill. So there would be a significant savings, be reduced tonnage going to the landfill, thereby reducing costs. It could very well offset and pay for itself should municipalities decide to go in the direction of composting for food scraps.
Great. You know, there was a whole group of questions sent ahead of time and since asking about what the biggest obstacle for regular folks is to get them to compost and how can the obstacle be addressed, or, you know, how do you motivate people to participate? What's the key to success? Kristin.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit because one of the reasons I got involved in the neighborhood composting group is because I'd had a home composting bin when I lived over in Montgomery County before, and I was not very successful at it. I wasn't very good at flipping it as often as I should, and I just, you know, it kind of just sat there. And so when I saw the notice, it was like, oh, well, that means, okay, that's good. I still can have some of the, you know, the fun of doing the process of composting, but it's a lot more motivation for me to actually, even though it's a little bit more of a hassle to have to take my food scraps somewhere else, it's still, it's a community. It's an enjoyable thing to go and have a work day and you know, meet people you wouldn't meet otherwise. So at least for me personally, that was one of the things, because I had tried home composting and kind of given it up, and I tried a worm bin and I killed all my worms. So, you know, it's much better for me to just go drop it off, but then still have the community of other composters. So that worked for me.
That's great.
I'd love to be able to touch on that answer. We hear this a lot from a lot of our residents when they ask about the program and, you know, how does it work? And is it going to be stinky, smelly? Am I going to get mice, rats, the whole program? And you know, Ben, you actually touched on this earlier. I have to explain to them, you have this material already in your trash can. If you're throwing the stuff out, you're just putting it into a different container. Now ours is drop off, so they do have to bring the 5-gallon bucket to us. But most of them are just amazed at seeing how much gets thrown away, and also how much lighter their actual trash can is after they take all the food scraps out. Now, sometimes in the summertime, it can be pretty nasty, but you just rinse it out and you move forward.
Can I add one last comment? So I think, you know, and we run into all this all the time with both residents and businesses, is even if people know it's good for the environment and you know, the tipping fees are lower, there's still inertia and switching costs. And once you start, you can't stop, but you know, some people need more of a push than others. So I'm very excited to see policies like pay as you throw and waste surcharges and things like that, that really would, you know, be more visible for people. And, you know, who, if I'm a residential customer and the municipality is picking up my trash, recycling, and composting, you know, I may not opt in because I can throw it all away for the same price. But now if I have to pay extra for my trash bins or my trash bags or something like that, even if it's not a lot, I mean, 5 cents for a plastic bag in a grocery store is not a lot, but it still causes behavior change. So I think that those things that can get more people over the line, those policy changes are really important. And it helps us as private businesses who are, you know, doing this for a living and have to earn our own living by convincing people to sign up for food waste recycling. It helps us make that case. And sorry, my dog is sneezing in the background.
Ben, for those on the call who don't know what pay as you throw is, could you just give us a 1-minute explanation?
Yeah, so I mean, the best example is like I was saying. So if I'm just a you know, and I am a regular resident in Montgomery County. So in parts of the county provides the trash and the recycling services as part of the tax bill. So I don't see what that costs, and I can throw away unlimited amount of trash and it doesn't impact my bill whatsoever. So if I pull all of my food waste out of that trash can into a compost bin and I pay Compost Crew $17 a month to come pick it up at the curbside, that's not saving me any money on the trash bill. And it's been rolled out in different ways. So one way that some municipalities have rolled it out is just, the trash collector will only collect orange trash bags, and you have to go pay for those orange trash bags. So you actually have to go spend money to get those orange trash bags. So you're paying for the quantity of trash that you're throwing out. So that causes that behavior change that, oh, well, now I do get the economic case for food waste recycling.
Okay, thanks. Mike, you have any questions queued up?
Let's see. What are the challenges to expanding composting in College Park to local restaurants, and how might those be overcome?
So we do not service restaurants or businesses. The city only services single-family households in the city. So it's not really an option for us at this time. It has been discussed. It will probably be brought up again, but right now it is not in the plans. It is a big area that could be tapped. At some point, I'd like to go out and talk to some of these and maybe refer them to some of these vendors like yourself, Ben, to be able to try to offset their costs and environmental impact.
Okay.
Just to add to that a little bit, it's not a very big part of it, but we have in the past at the Spring Hill Lake Rec Center site, we took buckets from the New Deal Cafe in Roosevelt Center in Greenbelt, and now those buckets are actually being composted at the new 3-bin system that's closer to it, and they kind of get pre-composted and fed to the worms and the worm wigwams behind so there's some from the co-op, also the grocery store. So there's been a little bit, but it's still in kind of this volunteer model, and Hallie is much more, Hallie Ahern is much more familiar with that. But what's happening here is again, still a very volunteer based, that you have a work day and you have, the big buckets of food scraps that they dump in, and it's a little bit more labor intensive, and it's not done by an outside service. It's done by a group of volunteers, but that's not very scalable, I don't think, unfortunately.
Okay.
Just one last thing on the businesses. So Maryland passed a law as of January 1st, 2023, any business that generates over 2 tons of food waste a week must recover or recycle that food waste in some way through composting or else some other way, if there's an organics recycling facility within 30 miles of that location. And then the threshold goes down to 1 ton a week in 2024. There are some exemptions for certain types of businesses, but that's rolling out next year by Maryland Department of Environment.
And Ben, what do you expect the impact to be of that as it rolls out?
We've already seen demand from some of the really large waste generators who are getting ready for compliance. For example, there's up in Jessup, Bioenergy Devco is building a large anaerobic digestion facility. It has 120,000 tons per year of capacity. And so they located near large food waste or food distributors that generate a lot of food waste. I mean, I've been in some of these factories for these juice and produce companies, and it's just unbelievable how much waste is going out the door. So they're getting ready to comply, which is good news. So it's definitely a good kick for them.
There was a question that came in ahead of time, before the roundtable, about apartment buildings. And I know there are some in some of the municipalities, although I don't know if municipal trash collection, I believe most apartment buildings are privately served, but I'm not sure about that. I'm just wondering if you all have any experience there with food scrap collection in apartment buildings and what can be done to advance that.
I don't have any particular experience. I do think, though, that when this has been a few years, I'm pretty sure in the apartment building that I lived in Montgomery County a few years ago, they did have a collection area in our trash room, I think, but I don't know that. I don't think I knew that much about it.
The city of College Park doesn't pick up from large apartment multifamily buildings. It is something, though, that for outreach, we were just discussing on seeing if we could get a group of residents that may be living in these multifamily places to talk to their property management about starting a program there. And I could facilitate that with Compost Crew or another vendor and try to get them on board.
And I guess I can add that I think we do have a few of the households that we have who participate in the bins, in our bins, do it partially because they live in apartments and don't have a place to do backyard composting. I'm not sure I don't think that's actually something that we've necessarily asked people specifically. Do you live in a single family home or a townhome or an apartment building? That would actually be an interesting question to ask about if that's part of their motivation for doing our system.
I'd say we work with probably a few dozen apartment buildings throughout the region. So Tower Companies was actually our first commercial customer back in 2015, 2016. They're based in Montgomery County.
So how does that work in the apartment buildings? Does everyone get their own little personal bin for the countertop and then they take it?
Yeah, they'll either get a personal bin or they'll get a 5-gallon bucket that then most of the time they will walk it down to a central loading dock, which is where we will collect from. Occasionally there will be a janitorial service that will come in and collect it like they do with the trash and recycling, or there's a central collection on a floor. So it's one of those three usually.
I wanted to make one comment. I saw something come up on the Q&A from Laura. Residents in College Park or anybody in College Park can bring for drop off to Department of Public Works or any of our locations, no matter where they live. They can be in an apartment building within the city. And bring it to our location. That's not a problem. It's just we do not market to them, but there's nothing holding them back from bringing it.
What would be most cost effective for a small municipality? What service would be most cost effective? That was the one from Cottage City.
I mean, I'll go because I answered it in writing. So what we've seen a lot of success with municipalities that are uncertain about what the participation is going to be, what demand from residents is going to be, is just starting with a few drop-off bins in a location, and then almost every time that bin capacity runs out really quickly, and they need more bins, and then they need more pickups throughout the week. So that's usually been the best way to gauge participation. And we usually advise if you are going to do a drop-off program, you got to figure out a location that is accessible but not overly convenient, because if it's too convenient, then you're going to get contamination. So I think like College Park's location is really nice because it's it's near homes, but it's not on the sidewalk. I mean, you have to go in a little bit to get there, so that you're not just going to get a bunch of trash and plastic.
Okay, thanks, Ben. We have another question. What do you do about unacceptable materials that are invariably get mixed in with acceptable materials? Anyone?
Well, for the county actually has zero tolerance. Although we do, and we have on occasion received some very interesting items. Our contractors are responsible for, as best as they can, without having to sift through, identify materials that are not acceptable before they're collected. Open the lid, take a look in. It is, if it's tipped in the back of the truck, we receive it. The majority of what we receive is acceptable material, surprisingly. But initially, when we started with our original pilot, our staff, wonderful team of MES employees that work at the composting facility would physically sift through and pull out any contaminants. We've grown beyond that stage. So now, unless it's a huge, obvious issue, like the toilet that came one time, it's plucked out with one of the wheel loaders. But the smaller items that we're not able to pull out that aren't obvious and visible will go through the grinder and get processed.
I can speak to the municipal level. When we first started the program, most people that take the time to bring their items to a drop-off location are very vested in it. You have to be. I mean, you're collecting this at home and actually bringing it. So we didn't have hardly any contamination. What we did find was a little bit more plastic bags than what we were hoping for. The confusion is that people thought that the green bags that they get from like Giant or Shoppers were compostable, and they are not. So I have had to do some outreach about that to say, yes, Moms and Whole Foods, those are normally compostable. Use the bags behind you. We provide them for a reason, and we put up extra signages, no plastic bags in the cart, and really saw it disappear almost immediately. So now the only time I really see any problems is if I go out there and I'll see like somebody that's had Popeyes or something, and they've put the box in there with all the bones, but unfortunately they've also put the utensils. So I do occasionally still go out there and just flip the carts open just to see what we're dealing with. And yes, I've got my rubber gloves on and yank it out, but only if I can just see it. Now, funny story, one time I went out there and there was a raccoon in there, alive, sound asleep, just having a good old time. And I had to get one of the guys to come out and tip the cart over very gently. And he literally, like a drunk person, rolled out of there, looked at all of us and ran off. It was hilarious.
And for our bins, we have them locked with a combination lock, so that because it is next to, the recreation, the public recreation facility parking lot. So, you have to go through the training and you have to get your secret codes to be able to open up our bins. So we've had a few people put in the compostable bags, which don't really compost in our system, but they, we just pick them out when we sift. And also the stickers off of bananas and things, those definitely we just end up picking out when we sift. But yeah, we haven't, other than that, we haven't had too many problems.
I have a question for Denise. When we were talking about how much waste was compostable, that included vegetative and meat, which is compostable at your facility, correct? It also included paper, compostable paper. So would I be correct in saying that you actually can compost it at the Western Branch facility, even more than food, the compostable paper, which is an even bigger wedge of the waste stream?
We do accept paper. I mean, as wax coated paper, preferably not, but it will break in our system because temperatures reach the temperatures over 140 degrees or more. We can accept it. We take yard trim bags. That's our preference because it's a nice rich brown. It helps to absorb the moisture. the papers, the cardboard boxes for pizzas and cardboard boxes in general. Paper we will accept, absolutely. And it's advised and we recommend it. If you have a cart and you have a bunch of food scraps, say you had some tomatoes and other vegetables, newspaper and other paper help to absorb that moisture. We also accept paper napkins and paper towels, paper plates. There's a huge variety of materials that we can accept because of our, the system that we have, that you cannot or would not be advisable in a backyard system, and maybe not in the 3-bin system that Janet has or Kristin has. So the materials that we can accept at Western Branch at the organics composting facility, we take just about anything that is or has been alive, It's if it comes from a tree or another plant, we'll take that. If it's a bone, it's acceptable. Milk and dairy, milk not so much. We try to dissuade residents from putting wet, liquidy materials in the cart. But if you boil it down and curdle the milk, freeze it before it goes in the cart, then it's not that bad to accept curbside. I personally line my 32-gallon wheel cart with a paper yard trim bag because I do not like the yuck factor that goes along with a lot of this stuff. So I line my cart and then I use compostable liners to freeze my materials in, place them in the bag, inside the cart, and roll the bag over. That keeps Rocky Raccoon out. And the contractors appreciate being able to snatch a paper bag and go, as opposed to having to tip the whole cart.
Does the facility have any issue with, are people putting so-called compostable plastic forks, spoons, straws, that kind of stuff that's supposed to be compostable in a facility like that? Are they throwing that in their compost bins too? And does it work?
I'm sure we're getting some of it, but because of the magnitude and size of our grinder, things go through our tub grinder and get broken down into particles very tiny. And if it doesn't break down through this process, then our materials are screened down to about 5/8. And after they're screened, anything that doesn't really break down oftentimes goes back into the pile for processing, because there are some liners that say compostable that don't break down the first time. There's some that are labeled biodegradable that don't necessarily break down completely the first time through. So we take our overs and run them back through. So eventually in time, if they're not of the highest standard, for lack of a better word, they'll process eventually. If not, they get screened out and they end up being trucked down to the landfill in the long run.
We have one question about wax. Let's see, ice cream containers that are coated in wax. Are they?
We accept them.
You do accept them, even though,
Yes. Okay. Recommend rinsing them thoroughly.
We have a question for Ben. Do you have restaurants that use your curbside pickup service? If so, are they saving money on their trash service? If you had a concentration of a lot of restaurants in one area that opted for curbside, might they be able to negotiate a reduced rate?
Yeah, we do have a number of restaurants that use our pickup service. Usually it's at a loading dock at the individual restaurant or at the property. And yeah, a lot of them do save money because, especially with restaurants or commercial kitchens, so much of the stuff that's going into their trash dumpster or compactor is food waste. And so they're paying a trash company to haul that away. And as we've noted, a lot of times the landfill tipping fee is higher than the compost tipping fee. So many restaurants or commercial kitchens do save money with composting. Now there's always that switching cost. So, not only do we have to be more when economics is the only concern and it's not about sustainability, then you have to be competitive, not just with the price that they're currently paying, but you have to convince them to get over that switching cost as well. And to your question about negotiating a reduced rate. So yeah, I mean, concentration of a lot of restaurants in one area definitely helps drive rates down. And we do that less with, I mean, if a customer of like a local chain will bring us a dozen restaurants or businesses at the same time, we can give a discount. But also, we've done this a lot with residents where a municipality is not providing curbside collection service. We've had residents get 50 to 100 neighbors together to sign up for curbside collection service. And so we'll knock our standard price of $32 a month down significantly because, you know, a lot of our residents are still, you know, we serve areas where we have to drive 10 minutes between stops to collect them. And that costs a lot of money. So if we can collect you know, within a neighborhood, I mean, that drives down the price a lot.
That's terrific. Thank you. Well, our time is coming to a close. We're in the last 5 minutes. And we hope that the webinars help to connect you across municipalities on these important interventions. Mike?
We're going to be sharing with you on these last 2 slides some resources on food scrap composting in the county, including some short videos on the county's organics composting facility and how to compost, as well as contacts for the speakers, which we'll also send you by email after the webinar. And both of our organizations will be following up with you after this.
Yeah, the next slide after this one actually has the email addresses. I know quite a few people asked for them. Gary, if you could go to the email addresses, the next slide. Yeah, good. Okay, well, first of all, thanks to the panelists for their great presentations and the participants for your questions and the dialogue, and special thanks to Gary Young, who's working hard behind the scenes. Maybe he'll peek out at us in a second. Expanded food scrap composting is one of the main recommendations in the Climate Action Plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but we can't reach that plan's goal without buy-in from all of you representing Prince George's municipalities, and we really thank you for your interest, and we're glad to help. Thanks again.